Hello, and welcome to this episode of Practicing Love. I'm your host, Shana James, and excited to be here today with a woman who I find incredibly inspiring and dear to my heart. And she works with divorce and the journey beyond divorce. So she's the founder and chief visionary of Journey Beyond Divorce, which is a coaching company, one of the biggest in the nation, more than half a dozen coaches. I'm excited today to hear a little bit because I've been interviewing experts about what they've struggled with in relationship and how they're now practicing love, because I don't believe that we just overcome, boop, it's gone. It takes ongoing effort, energy. We try to have it feel as little like as less like work as possible. But as we dive in, anything you want to say to get started about your journey beyond divorce?
Well, I will just jump on the last thing you said, which is I do think that we're all meant to practice and refine our ability to love until we meet our maker. So it's a long journey, but for those of us who choose to be on it, I think it's a very exciting, inspiring, and fruitful one.
I love how you said that. That is how I hold it too, right? That we're continually learning to love deeper, better, receive love. I know that's a struggle for many people too.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit either about your current relationship status or anything, right? With Journey Beyond Divorce, one might imagine that you've gone through a divorce. So anything about your history that helps us understand your relationship journey?
Oh gosh. So I have not been in a relationship for well over a decade. And I did begin dating in the beginning of 2025. It is a very slow and patient producing process. Yes, if one is very anxious and has to have it happen right away, it could be a hard process. But I started back in January. I've met some interesting people.
Yes.
I've had some memorable interactions. I've had some lovely interactions. I've had some good chuckles. I have a little bit of a stand-up comedy act that I'm putting together as a result of some of my dating, and then it kind of all fizzled out. And it's so interesting, like a body in motion stays in motion. Well, once like match ended and I didn't sign up for my next speed dating thing, I was like, oh, I'm actually not dating. It's all over. I have to start all over again. So that's my current status is I'm about to sign up for eHarmony.
Okay.
And I've committed to get back on. I really like the speed dating. We could talk about that if you want.
Yeah.
So I'm going to book one or two speed dating events because I'm impatient and you meet 12 men in 2 hours and it's done.
I think speed dating is brilliant because it takes away that, right? There are many people you meet at one time. You also get a taste of someone in person instead of all the messaging back and forth and then meeting in person and realizing like, oh, I didn't really have a feel for this person. And yeah, I think it's fantastic. And I love that you're out there, note to all the single men out there.
Yes, I am open and available.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as for my history, yes, I launched Journey Beyond Divorce because I went through a very long and arduous and high conflict divorce, and that was like 19 years ago.
Yeah.
My children were very, very young. I was a little bit of a hot mess, and that might be an understatement. And I think that one of the things that I realized after my divorce and had done some work was connecting the dots to the relationships that I had prior to getting married.
Yeah.
And all the way back to the relationship I had with my mom and dad. And so that has been so informative for me. And it's like one of my sayings that nobody ever understands is you didn't lick it off the grass. And they're like, what does that mean? And it's a little bit like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You didn't lick it off the grass. Someone gave it to you. Your mother and father gave it to you,
Yes.
willingly or otherwise. And so for me, A few things I know. I know that my entire life, I was always the lucky one.
Mm,
I
the
never
lucky
felt
one.
like the guy was the lucky one. When I was in a
Oh,
relationship, I was hands down the lucky one. Red flag number one.
because right, like you were lucky to be with him.
I was always lucky to be with him.
Got it. Okay. Yes.
I
Red flag.
never thought of him as being lucky to be with me.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes me
And
sad.
and oftentimes he didn't consider himself very lucky to be with me
No.
either.
Yeah.
P.S. I had some really unhealthy and imbalanced and dysfunctional relationships. And then I got married and I had a very high conflict relationship. I married somebody who was incredibly charismatic, whose IQ was off the charts, which was my thing. I all the guys I've ever dated were super, super, super smart.
Yeah.
Nobody ever told me this thing about emotional intelligence. So I was just going for intelligence, and their intelligence was off the charts.
Yes.
When
But
I
their
learned about
emotional
emotional
intelligence.
intelligence, I was like, oh, okay. Now that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
And this is
You
the
knew
other
you knew
thing
you
that
were
I
going for
realized.
something. It was just not exactly the track.
I missed the mark just a little bit.
Yeah.
But the other thing that was fascinating to me is when I look back at all the guys I dated, my number one value was not in their lives. So I'm a
Oh,
relationship girl through and
interesting.
through my
Yeah.
entire life. Girlfriends, guy friends, family. I'm super, super relationship oriented.
Yeah.
And when I took this scan, it was after I became a coach a bunch of years ago, and someone had me do a relationship scan. And I was like, holy moly, none of them had any depth of relationship with like intimate relationships with parents, with siblings. Like it was just
Wow.
hardly any friends. Like it was like, and I'm like, how did I not see that? And I
Uh-huh.
say this so that your audience, it's like if there's something you don't see, gentle kindness and
Gentle,
compassion
right?
towards
Compassion
yourself.
with yourself, because many of us don't see that because we're not trained, or we are trained to see a certain way.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a couple of milestones of
Well,
my relationship.
I can feel now, you could tell me if I'm wrong, but now it feels to me like you you could imagine that a man being with you or a person being with you would be lucky. And so I'm happy about that journey that you've been on.
Oh yeah, I have come to the place that I know with every ounce of my being that I'm a prize.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and I want to find someone who is equally a prize,
Yeah.
but for me the important thing is to know that I'm a prize. I deserve a certain type of relationship and
Yes.
connection and emotional, spiritual, physical intimacy, and I don't think I ever knew that before.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask how you came to know that, but I'm wondering if we want to go into more of the struggle first. But maybe some of the ways you came to know that were through the
Yes.
struggle. Let's see. Yes. So,
Yeah.
okay, if we dive into what is something that you've struggled with, maybe it's more of what you've been talking about.
Well, I think certainly self-worth is a foundational thing that I struggled with. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize it because I left home at 19 years old. I was super successful at everything I did professionally. I just went out there and I had this confidence and I did it and I had fun doing it. And that was great. And I just was equally as unsuccessful in each of my romantic
Love
relationships.
relationships.
And so the self-worth thing was a piece of it. And then when you asked the question, the first thing that came to me, and it might be because I'm so passionate about it too, but it's boundaries.
Mm,
And I did not know from a boundary. I did not have boundaries. And, there's an internal boundary I teach first to people. And
ooh,
I
tell
didn't
us.
have it. And most people that I know, like, don't have it. And then I was married to a very high conflict individual, and he's hard to be in relationship with.
Yeah.
And he had a very big personality. So if you don't have boundaries with a big personality, you're probably going to get steamrolled. And
Yes.
so I did, and then I learned them. And then my children were very, very young. barely in grade school when the divorce was finalized, which took 3.5 years. So I think my daughter wasn't even in kindergarten when it started. And so I had like a decade to teach them boundaries so that
Yes.
they could navigate not just dad, but like all of the complex personalities that cross our path. So I
Totally.
would say that boundaries is something that I learned, that I love teaching about, that I practice, and that my statement would be that healthy relationships require healthy boundaries. You
Yes.
cannot have a healthy relationship without boundaries.
Agreed. Agreed. Okay. So before we go back to the internal boundary that I want to hear that you teach, so people can also self-identify or know, oh, I am in a relationship where I don't have boundaries, or oh, this is what this looks like. What was happening that now you look back and you see that happened because I did not have boundaries? One thing you said was being steamrolled.
Yeah. So I was very God, there's so much on a communication front. My ex-husband had anger management issues, and so very verbally and emotionally abusive.
I'm
And
sorry.
I would just take it. I would
Take it.
just sit there and I would just receive it and maybe believe it. When it came to finances, he used to say to me, I'd say, I am so uncomfortable with our debt. And he'd be like, we're deficit spending like the rest of the country. What's the big deal? Everything was under my name because his credit
Wow.
was already shot to shit. I don't know if we're allowed to curse
Oh,
on this podcast. So I
you
had
can.
AAA credit when we met, and he had triple F credit when we met. And so the house went under my name, the cars went under my name. And then he was deficit spending, and I could have said no. It was my social security number. It was my name. I
Wow.
had full and complete authority to say no bloody way. I had no
And you did not.
boundaries.
Yeah.
No, I destroyed my credit,
Yeah.
destroyed my credit. Yeah. And it's not like he was holding a gun to my head. I
No.
just was not equipped with the concept or understanding or familiarity with boundaries.
Well, right. And yes, he was not holding a gun to your head, but the sense of belonging or the sense of being loved, all of those things can feel like
Yeah.
death if we're about to lose them.
Yeah, and there was loyalty, and how could I not? And he was smart and charismatic. He would kind of talk in ways that I was like, well, that almost makes sense.
Right.
Like, why not? And then I'd be like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, right. You made decisions, credit being a very concrete example where you didn't say no, even though you could see the trajectory and what could happen and the negative impact on you and your life, probably on your children as well.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say that maybe is even a little bit less concrete than that?
Well, the other interesting thing, and this was probably where I started setting them. We were both at one point in the same industry. I was selling commercial printing. He was in the commercial printing industry when we moved, and I had been selling real estate. He said, you could sell anything. Why not sell printing? And then a guy came to work for the company I was working for, and he used to work with my ex, and they had a big fight. And so this was typical of what would happen. And this guy came to my company. It was really, he was such a big producer. He would like throw me these like piddly little accounts, and I was thrilled. And I came home and said something to my husband, and he was like, he is our enemy. You are never to speak to him. You are not to engage with
Oh,
him. You are not to take any accounts from him. And I was like, that's crazy. This guy's like nothing but nice to me. Like, your issue is your issue. You are being disloyal. And then he always threw the divorce word. So I'm going to divorce you. Like, that was, and that was probably the first time. And there had been so many non-boundaries where he blew through what other people would have had as boundaries. And I was
yeah.
like, you can't tell me how to behave with another human being. Like, you
Right.
can't tell me to be angry at a guy who's being really nice to me that I like. And he said, he was so 1,000% sure that if I were to do that, I was being the most disloyal wife on the face of the earth.
Wow. And it
And if
wasn't
you're
even about your well-being, it was about
no,
you being loyal to him.
exactly,
Right.
exactly. And so it was like, and I was so like cocking my head to the side and going, well, that just doesn't even make sense to me. But on the other hand, there's a saying, don't be so open-minded that your brains fall out. I think I lean a little too far in that direction,
Interesting.
because I'd be like, oh, well, it's a good point. Maybe I shouldn't. And
Yeah.
but it just, but then I'd go into work the next day and I don't even remember the guy's name, but whatever his name, just such a nice, friendly
Nice.
guy.
I love
And
the
so, yeah,
I was
that
just
was
gonna
hard.
say when you were talking about okay, I really value curiosity and having an open brain. I probably also lean into the my brains fall out. Um, but I also think it's when you combine that with knowing yourself and being able to take actions that take care of yourself, then we don't actually have to shut down the curiosity or the openness, right? So we can have boundaries simultaneously. We can actually be open and say, oh, maybe I am only seeing part of this other person,
Yeah.
or maybe I am only seeing part of my partner, or
Yeah.
right. There are ways that we can hold boundaries that are detrimental for relationships, and then there are ways that support relationships. So I think it can be so complicated in that way.
And I think when we first begin, we're like a pendulum. So I went from no boundaries to really unhealthy, like hostile boundaries,
Yes.
because, and then I ultimately settled into a more healthy space. But
Yeah.
when somebody else is 1,000% sure, right,
Yes.
charismatic, intelligent, and 1,000% sure, uh, it is so vitally important that you know who you are and you know what your values are. I mean, that's why we do the work. Or what are your values, and what are your priorities, so that
Yeah.
we understand that there's a lane that I swim in, and nobody gets to pull me out of that lane. I can choose to leave that lane, but
Yes.
nobody
Nobody gets to
controls.
pull me or controls me.
And I think that brings us to that internal boundary. I think that so many of us, if I could I just
Please.
talk about that? I
Mm-hmm.
think so many of us are raised, now I certainly was raised, if I am triggered, if I am upset by something, there is a person or a circumstance that is at fault
Yeah.
outside of me. Wrong. But when you believe that, right?
Yes.
So it's like, so you start there. And so when I talk about boundaries, the protective boundaries, how do I protect myself from somebody who's hurtful? But before that is the containment boundary. And the
Yeah.
containment boundary is, what do I do when I get upset? And if I vomit all over whoever is in front of me, and I should all over them, and I blame and accuse or belittle or berate,
It's
I'm
not
not
going to go well.
containing.
No.
Or if I behave badly and then I turn to you and I'm like, it's not my fault. I mean, you said that thing and you made me do it.
Yes.
So all of that is broken boundaries. And so the internal boundary is, where do I not take full responsibility for my thoughts, feelings, and actions?
Ooh, I like that. Will you say that again?
Yeah. Yeah. Where do I not take full responsibility for my thoughts, feelings, and actions?
Yeah.
You cannot make me feel.
Yeah.
You just can't. You're not that powerful. You cannot make me feel. And so if I feel something, it's much more likely because of my history, my family of origin, my life experience, my
Yes.
perspectives. Now, you could say something, you get angry and you get hostile and you cuss and yell. But if you've got three people in front of you and you're having the exact same, let's say you're throwing a little emotional temper tantrum,
Yeah.
and one person comes from an abusive family, they're devastated. They're hiding in the cubicle. They're like scared that they're going to like get in trouble. You have another person also maybe from a high conflict situation. They get in your face and start yelling and screaming at you because
Yep.
you made them so angry. And then the third person comes from a healthy background and they're like, wow, seems like she had a pretty rough day today, and that's not really inappropriate. That's not really appropriate how she's acting. So tomorrow, when we're both calm, I'm going to go in and have a
We're going to actually
conversation
have a
with her and
conversation.
let her know that, that didn't really work so well for me, and can we deal with it differently?
Yeah.
So could you possibly have made three people feel three completely different things?
Right.
No,
No.
they felt what they felt based on their life experience. And I think that people typically, when I'm teaching this, it's like it's a huge
It's a
aha. And
hard one to
it was a
let
huge
go of.
aha for me too. It's like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
And
I think when I
yet,
work with people on that too, it's like it's a hard one to it's a hard pill to swallow, let's say, because there's so much pride wrapped up in it, or because then we do have to take personal responsibility. And then it's like, I hear people say, well, what, but don't they have any part in it? Well, of course they have a part in it, but they've got their part and you've got your part. And right, the only thing you actually have control over right now is your part. So let's get you conscious and, coming from that place of
100%.
consciousness.
And the beauty of boundaries is,
Yeah.
yes, I have to take full responsibility for myself, but it frees me completely.
Yes.
It invites love in, because
Oh,
I have a protective layer, and so you're not going to hurt me,
mm,
because the boundary doesn't keep out love, it just protects me. And so you can have a depth of love, you can have a depth of an expanse of freedom in your relationships, all because you own what's yours,
yeah.
you don't clean up their side of the street,
Yeah.
and you stay in your lane.
I love hearing that distinction that the boundary doesn't keep love out. I don't think I've heard it in that particular way, but it's really beautiful because, right, the boundary isn't about I'm not letting in love and I'm not opening my heart. The boundary is about I'm not going to take in what's not mine, or I'm not going to take in what is, I don't want to use the word toxic because these days it's, but there's another word, right? Like
Yeah,
something that
unhealthy.
unhealthy.
Yeah. And I think that, again, with the pendulum, when we start setting boundaries, it's like, this is my steel wall. And I had a steel wall. And then it's like, well, let's see if I could work toward a garden gate, like a little
Yes.
picket fence, a garden gate. So you get to choose when to open
Yes.
it, when to
When to
close
open.
it. It's a little more porous. It has a little bit more flexibility. And I don't have to worry that it's not a steel wall, because I'm so skilled at my boundaries that closing my garden gate is really all I need.
I love that. I've often worked with people around having a no, which we can call a boundary, right? And when you're so clear that you can say it as, fully as you need to, then you rarely ever need to say it because you already walk around in the world, you're not inviting in the kind of
Right.
people who try to push up against that boundary.
And yet, many of my clients, because I
Mm-hmm.
not only do divorce, but I specialize in high conflict divorce,
Yeah.
given my own, um, they have the most wishy washy no's. And I'm
Interesting.
like, your no is so limp and sad
Yeah.
that, of course, he or she is going to plow right over it. Your no invites the plow.
Yeah.
And so firm no's. And if you're saying yes, mean yes. And if you're saying no, say it firmly. And it's these little things that and so many of my clients fall into, my clients are often a hot mess, but they're the spouse of the more high conflict
Right.
person, the person
Right.
who's less flexible, more black and white, more blaming and accusing. And
Yeah.
so my person, though, they they're afraid. They come out of fear. So much of what they do is they come out of fear. And so I was thinking maybe I wouldn't help. I'm not so sure if I want to help with, no, just say no. No, I'm sorry, I'm not available.
Yeah.
But if you need help next Wednesday, I can help you.
Mm-hmm.
So just teaching them. And then what comes up, because boundaries are not complicated,
Yeah.
it's all of the emotional tentacles to my audience. people-pleasing, codependent, conflict-averse, very fear-based,
Yes.
typically very traumatized from their own childhood and their own parents', ways of being. And so what's so interesting is it's not complex to set a boundary
No.
unless good girls don't set boundaries,
Right. Or nice
unless
guys don't set
nice.
boundaries either.
So, and all of that. And so when we're struggling with boundaries, it's not the nuts and bolts of the boundary. It's like,
No.
what are those tentacles? What are the stories? What are the beliefs that might not even be conscious that
Yes.
make you break out in hives when you think about setting a boundary?
I remember I have a very vivid memory of one time when I was asked to lead a workshop by one of my colleagues, and I really needed that time, that downtime. And I said no. And then I remember hanging up the phone and I cried for hours because the fear was he would never trust me again. He would never ask me again. That was going to be the end of my career, right? All of these like huge assumptions or fears.
Yeah.
And when our no is not received from a young age as an option,
Right.
or when we are bullied out of our no, all of those stories live inside of us.
Yeah.
So,
100%. And the other thing I'll say is, and this is something I'm learning so much about now, is, the body holds the score. And
yes.
so it's not just that I have these thoughts or beliefs. It's like my entire system is
Yeah.
dysregulated and it's going into fight and flight on such a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. I can't remember what I was going to say. I can't think about that last time it happened that I told myself to remember. Like, it's just like everything goes sideways. And so learning about somatic healing and the body is so wise. So we've got our spirit and our intuition, which is so wise, our fear, which is so loud, our logic, which wants to always override our intuition, and then our body is holding the score and releasing that and trusting that if I can settle into an easeful body,
Mm,
everything else is going to bring more ease is just so necessary.
I love that.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that helped you start to set boundaries when you hadn't been?
I remember my first boundary like it was yesterday. And I was we had an English tutor, center hall English tutor, and I was coming down the steps. The kids, maybe 4 and 6, were in the living room, and I was coming down the steps, and I just got hit with cussing, nasty. I have no recollection of what I had done so wrong, but
Mhm.
there was a big upset. And I was standing there, and all of a sudden, it's so weird how this happened. I just looked over at the front door, and there was the table in the entryway and my car keys. And it was almost like a download from the divine. It's like, your children are fine, take the keys and leave.
Wow.
And I remember standing there going, that's scary. Can I do that? And it was just like I was directed to
Wow.
leave now. And I just looked at him and said whatever I said, and I grabbed the keys and I drove. I just drove away.
Yeah.
And it was like, da, 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 da. I was like, oh my God.
I just set a
Oh my
boundary.
God. I just did this thing. I didn't even know it was a boundary then. I just thought,
You
that was
just took
so
care of yourself.
liberating. That
Yeah.
was so liberating. Like, I did not have to sit there and have this nastiness slung at me.
Yes.
And I was in therapy, and I don't know that there were divorce coaches back then, but I was in therapy, and it was great to be able to go to the sounding board every week and talk through what was happening and what I was thinking and kind of piece it apart. And she really helped me to start putting some teeth to my boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And good. Okay. And from there, anything else that helped you continue to set those boundaries?
There were a million things. I was in a 3.5 year high conflict divorce. I asked my husband to move up to the attic. We had a four floor English tutor, a finished basement and attic. So we were very lucky. And he did, and then he moved back in. And I thought, I think I was a little bit further along because I knew I can't control him. Let me move. So I moved up to the attic. Now, again, my kids were about 4 and 6 because I was really worried about not being on the same floor with them at night.
Yeah.
You know, it's mommy. I'm the one who they always came to. So,
Yep.
so my first boundary was saying, I'm moving upstairs and I'm not moving back and you're not welcome up there. And there were 2 locks. There was a lock on the second floor and a lock on my bedroom on the 3rd floor. And I went out and I bought my kids walkie-talkies and I made a game of it. And I was like, hey
Wow.
guys, we're going to do this really fun thing. And if you wake up in the middle of the night, just like,
You
you know,
walkie-talkie me.
you just walkie-talking me and you can come upstairs and we'll have play dates up here. And I just did whatever I could. I was up there for over 3 years.
Wow.
It was like 110 degrees year round when the heat was rising or it was hot outside. So it was like boiling. And my ex, the other boundary was my ex continues to be really verbose and he was devastated. He would beg and then berate and then beg and then berate. And it felt like Chinese torture.
Yeah.
And he would stand outside the door and he would just talk at me for hours and hours and hours. And so my stepfather was working for the New York Post and he gave me a headset because they were doing construction. And so I would have my music on, I would have my construction headset on, and I'd be looking at a candle trying to meditate and not hear that. So I didn't realize it, but I was building all of these boundaries to protect myself from, and that the police got involved. I got an order of protection. You know, there were all types of bigger boundaries that happened over the course. It's a total hot mess.
Yeah.
And so I learned. I had no choice but to learn. And truth be told, I was utterly unskillful in the beginning. I'm sure I was shaming and blaming and a total hot mess. I always feel it's important because, you know, people hear you and me on podcasts and they're like, oh, don't they have their act together? And it's like, I was the hottest mess. I was the most broken woman. And it's like, I've just worked really, really hard. And I just like to pay forward what I've learned.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, my ex-husband and I often have conversations where he's like, oh my gosh, you've grown so much, right? I never blamed, shamed. That wasn't my thing because I had a mom who did that. So I didn't do that, but I was emotionally just sort of volatile or unstable, or I would threaten the end of the relationship, right? This isn't going to work anymore. And it was just like, right? Not grounded, not connected. He didn't feel heard in a lot of ways. And he had his part as well. But I think it's so important for everybody to know that, right, we are still practicing. We are not perfect and nobody's perfect. And therefore, nobody's alone in this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking about the struggle and being vulnerable in that, and also sharing the wisdom that you've gained from that. Is there anything else that feels important to cover for people who are starting to get a sense of, oh, boundary, this is what a boundary is, this is how I could do it?
Well, I will say, I have 2 children. My daughter emerged with a lot of difficult tendencies from the marriage and, you know, being born of the 2 of us and what have you. And it's really different when you start setting boundaries, like setting boundaries with someone who I was like, I hate you, you know, like setting boundaries with a husband who was being abusive was a very different experience than setting boundaries with the human being that I brought into the world who was being abusive. And so because the name of your podcast is Practicing Love, I will wrap up my part with my daughter struggled with even wanting to be alive for a bunch of years. And I was beside myself. I was helping all these amazing human beings around the world. And I didn't know if I could keep my daughter alive.
Wow.
And it was about a 5-year period for me. And the download that I got at that time, and I'm a Christian, I pray every day. So I get some beautiful downloads. And this download was, I was like, how do I do this? What do I do? How do I keep her alive? How do I keep from killing her myself? Like all of those things. And he said, just be love.
Be love.
And that was it. Just be love. And if I tell you, that's how I live my life. And it served me so well. I would wake up and she was smoking cigarettes and smoking dope, and her stuff was all over the place. I was in this little 1-bedroom cottage. She was living in my living room. She was kind of cranky and sometimes not so nice. And it was just like, what would love do? Love would clean up all her stuff. Love would scoot her into my bed and let her sleep as late as she needs to sleep. Love would clean up her cigarettes and her other things and not say a word and not scold. And love will be A, B, and C. And that was 5 or 6 years ago. My daughter's doing fabulous.
I'm so glad.
Just be love. And it's really kind of a very simple and yet incredibly powerful. It's my mantra. It is what I do everything from. What would it look like if I was just love?
Well, this is why we get along so well, because this is my mantra. And that's, what I've really come to is all I want to do is be love. And when we are being love in our communication, in a relationship, in these dynamics, we show up very differently than when we forget that we can be love, and that we can be love with a boundary. We can be love with clarity. We can be love with preferences. We can be love with, all of these different parts that honor ourselves and our sovereignty. And we can still be love or be loving about it.
Because being love begins with self-love.
Yes.
You can't be love if you don't have self-love.
Yes.
Yeah. I love it.
And knowing that you are worthy.
Yes.
No matter what.
And we're all worthy. We're all worthy of the best that life has for us. And when we come from families where we were given other messaging, it could take decades to learn that lesson. And
yeah, I think for most of us it
the
does.
and the people listening to your podcast are so lucky because you just talk about it all the time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And we're so fortunate to have you, and the people who you support are so fortunate to have you in this most challenging time. So where can people find you if they are on the verge of divorce or going through divorce or know somebody else who's going through divorce? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so I have a podcast that started back in 2016. I've got over 430 episodes. It's called Journey Beyond Divorce. It's a great place to go to or to send a friend or family member to, because no matter what your question is, legal, financial, co-parenting, money, emotional regulation, fear, anxiety, whatever, it's there. And I have interviewed some of the most brilliant leaders around the country and world. And then journeybeyonddivorce.com is our website. We do offer a free call. So if you're tuning in and this is just, I'm resonating with you, the concept of learning more resonates with you, rapidreliefcall.com invites you into a 1-hour call where we do some coaching. We figure out what you need and if we're a good fit. And I invite you to schedule a call.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll put the link in the show notes. And thank you again for being here and for being you.
Thank you for inviting me. It was lovely.